for the hardest-hitting show in talk radio. The true progressive voice since 2012. This is Southpaws.
And welcome to Southpaws on the Pacifica Radio Network. We are the leaders of the revolution. I'm Darren Gibson. We're going to talk about classified documents. Yes, there's more of them. This time at Mike Pence's home in Indiana. My old Indiana home. No, that's my old Kentucky home. Sorry about that. Let's see. President Biden says that he's sending tanks to Ukraine. We also have to talk about what's happening in Memphis. 5 police officers been charged with murder for beating somebody to death over a traffic stop. Plus, we have some stories we didn't get to last week, including some really bad news involving the climate. Plus, we've got hammer time, and we have an update on our voting and balloting for Hammer Time 2022. So before we get to today's topics, a couple of reminders. You can follow us on social media by going to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show. You can follow us on Tumblr at southpawsradioshow.tumblr.com. You can follow us on YouTube by doing a search for Southpaws Radio. You can follow us on Mastodon by doing a search for Southpaws Radio. And you can become a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/Southpaws Radio. You can listen to the show anytime at Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Podcast Addict, Podvine, and Pandora by doing a search for Southpaws. And once you found our logo, you found us. We send links to our weekly episodes to our Facebook, YouTube, Tumblr, and Mastodon accounts. You can listen to us on Global Community Radio Channel 1 every Saturday night at 11 Eastern. And you can listen to us on great Pacifica stations, including KCEI in Taos, New Mexico, KZGM in Kabul, Missouri, and KEPJ in San Antonio, Texas. So be sure to listen to us on your local Pacifica affiliate. Before we get too deep into today's show, we want to give you an update on something that we mentioned in passing the last couple of weeks. The Blue Ribbon Panel has voted, and they have submitted their ballots. And we have narrowed down 77 people and places and businesses and entities that won Douchebag of the Week for the calendar year 2022. We have narrowed those 77 candidates down to 10. So here is the official list of the 10 Douchebag of the Year candidates for 2022. They are Texas Governor Greg Abbott, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump, Michigan gubernatorial candidate Tudor Dixon, the chief twin himself Elon Musk, Michigan Republican State House candidate Robert Regan, Berry County Sheriff Dar Leaf, House Majority Whip Jim Clyburn out of South Carolina, and former Michigan Republican congressional candidate John Gibbs, who is now the supervisor of Ottawa County, Michigan. So, for details of why these 10 made it and the others didn't, we're going to have a vote. We're going to have the names posted to our Facebook page. Go to facebook.com/Southpaws Radio Show. The 10 candidates are going to be listed there. We're going to keep polling open for a couple of weeks. Give me your top 3 candidates in order. We will do ranked choice voting, and we will have the winner announced on a future episode of Southpaws in February. So make sure you vote. Vote now. Go to our Facebook page. Get your ballots in for Douchebag of the Year 2022. I want to start out today's episode with this story. It's an update on something that we mentioned in passing last week. This is CBS News and the Associated Press. This is dated January 26th, the day we are recording this show. 5 fired Memphis police officers were charged with second-degree murder in the death of Tyre Nichols, according to an announcement today by Tennessee authorities. Nichols died 3 days after a violent arrest by police earlier this month. Tennessee Bureau of Investigation Director David Roush, during a press conference announcing the charges, said, quote, "This was wrong, this was criminal," end of quote. A grand jury handed up indictments against Tadarius Bean, Demetrius Haley, Desmond Mills Jr., Emmett Martin III, and Justin Smith on charges of second-degree murder, aggravated assault, aggravated kidnapping, official misconduct, and official oppression. That is according to Shelby County District Attorney Steve Mulroy. Mulroy said that although the fired officers each played different roles in the death of Nichols, quote, "they are all responsible," end of quote. Video footage of the arrest will be released Friday sometime after 6 p.m., according to Mulroy. The footage has been shown to Nichols' family, but has not yet been made public. And I can tell you why they're waiting until after 6 o'clock Friday, because that's going to be after the local news, because I have been told that this footage is damning to the point that businesses have already started to purchase riot insurance because they're afraid this is going to make the George Floyd protests look like nothing. This is how awful this footage apparently is. Ben Crump, the attorney representing Nichols' family, said police video the family viewed showed that Nichols, a 29-year-old FedEx worker and father, was shocked, pepper sprayed, and restrained when he was pulled over for a traffic stop near his home. Roush said he saw the video and found it, quote, "absolutely appalling," end of quote. He added, quote, "let me be clear, what happened here does not at all reflect proper policing," end of quote. Memphis Police Director Saralyn C.J. Davis made a plea to residents of the city to protest peacefully when video of the arrest is released. She has called the fired officers' actions that night, quote, "heinous, reckless, and inhumane," end of quote. In a video statement that was released late Wednesday on social media, Davis said, quote, "this is not just a professional failing, this is a failing of basic humanity toward another individual," end of quote. The 5 officers found to be directly responsible for the physical abuse of Nichols were fired last week, but Davis said other officers are still being investigated for violating department policy. Nichols was black, as are the 5 officers involved in the arrest. I should say former officers, they've all been fired. Second-degree murder is a Class A felony punishable by 15 to 60 years in prison under Tennessee law. Nichols' stepfather, Ronnie Wells, told the Associated Press by phone that he and his wife, Ro Vaughn Wells, who is Nichols' mother, discussed the second-degree murder charges and are fine with it. They had pushed for first-degree murder charges. He said, quote, "there's other charges, so I'm all right with that," end of quote. Yeah, they should have been charged with first-degree murder, because that's what it was, pre-planned execution. Wells, who earlier this week called for any protests that happened when the video was released to remain peaceful, also said he is ecstatic that authorities have moved quickly in the case. Nichols was returning home from a suburban park where he had taken photos of the sunset. The legal team representing the family said that officers beat Nichols for 3 minutes in a savage encounter reminiscent of the infamous 1991 police beating of Los Angeles motorist Rodney King. Difference is Rodney King survived and Nichols didn't. This is disgusting. And like I've said, I hope they protest and I hope they're loud and they raise a whole bunch of hell down there, because this needs to stop. This type of behavior by these cops needs to end now. If you're not going to reform the policing, then you need to fire them all and start all over again and get somebody that knows what they're doing. And for that matter, you need to have de-escalation training. instead of escalating everything. Because that's what cops do right now. They escalate everything. It's the truth. All right, I tell you what. Let's go ahead to our next story here, because if I continue thinking about Tyre Nichols, I'm going to get really upset. Let's go to our next story. This is Summer Concepcion and Peter Alexander writing for NBC News. This is dated January 24th. Yes, more classified documents, but not where you think they are. A small number of classified documents were discovered last week at the home of former Vice President Mike Pence. That's according to 2 letters that Pence's counsel sent to the National Archives, obtained by NBC News on Tuesday. The lawyer, Greg Jacobs, said the documents were discovered on January 16th after Pence asked outside counsel to look for records bearing classified markings following the recent news about documents found in President Joe Biden's Delaware home. Yeah, so these documents were in Pence's home in Indiana. So there it is, folks. Jacob said the documents were inadvertently boxed and transported to Pence's home at the end of the Trump administration. Jacob said that Pence, quote, was unaware of the existence of sensitive or classified documents at his personal residence, end of quote. I don't know if I really believe that one. Let me just tell you. The discovery was first reported by CNN. Pence's team immediately secured the classified documents in a locked safe, according to Attorney Jacob. He added, quote, Vice President Pence understands the high importance of protecting sensitive and classified information and stands ready and willing to cooperate fully with the National Archives and any appropriate inquiry, end of quote. On the evening of January 19th, after the National Archives alerted the Justice Department to the records, FBI agents came to Pence's home to retrieve the documents, according to Attorney Jacobs. He said Pence was in Washington, D.C. to attend the March for Life at the time, but immediately agreed to the process. Yeah, and right there is another part of the problem. This March for Life bullshit, because that's what it is, folks. I am so sick of right to life. I'm sick of conservatives. I wish I could put them all in a rocket and send them to Mars. One-way trip. That'd be nice. The transfer was facilitated by Pence's personal attorney, who has experience in handling classified documents and was involved with the January 16th discovery. Pence spokesman Devin O'Malley later told NBC News that no potential classified documents were found at the offices of Pence's organization Advancing American Freedom after Pence's team searched the offices and the former vice president's home in Indiana. O'Malley said that a total of 4 boxes, 2 containing papers with classified markings and 2 with courtesy copies of vice presidential papers, were hand-delivered by Pence's legal team to the National Archives and Records Administration on Monday. News about Pence's documents comes after records with classified markings from the Obama administration were found at Biden's Delaware residence and a Washington office he used after he was vice president. Attorney General Merrick Garland appointed Robert Hur to serve as a special counsel to review the material. House Republicans have also opened up investigations into the matter. Well, I hope they open up investigations into Pence now and Trump. Attorney General Garland Tuesday declined to answer questions from reporters on Pence's records following an unrelated news conference. Asked about the Pence documents, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell said that the Justice Department must, quote, treat everybody the same who has misplaced classified documents, end of quote. Senate Intelligence Committee Chair Mark Warner and Vice Chair Marco Rubio, meanwhile, told reporters that they want briefings on the matter from the intelligence community. Warner, Democrat of Virginia, said, quote, I kind of thought, holy heck, and I do wonder how many other formers, end of quote. Rubio, Republican of Florida, said, quote, what the hell's going on around here is my reaction, end of quote. Rubio says he wants answers from the Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines, who is scheduled to appear before the committee on Wednesday for an unrelated matter. Rubio added, quote, but there's no way this topic doesn't come up and she'll be aware of that, end of quote. A senior administration official told NBC News that the intelligence community's damage assessment regarding Trump and Biden's mishandling of classified material has not been completed. The White House counsel's office said this week that it was reviewing recent requests from House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer, Republican of Kentucky, related to Biden's handling of classified documents. The White House also said it was reviewing requests from House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan, Republican of Ohio. That is, if Jim Jordan doesn't have another sex scandal to cover up. In a statement Tuesday, Comer said Pence reached out to the panel about classified documents found at his Indiana residence. Comer said, quote, he has agreed to fully cooperate with congressional oversight and any questions we have about the matter, end of quote. Comer added that he believes Pence's, quote, transparency stands in stark contrast to Biden White House staff who continue to withhold information from Congress and the American people, end of quote. Yeah, I tell you. Always consider Republicans to be consistent on things, let me just tell you. Earlier this month, Pence told CBS News in an interview that he was confident his staff made sure that no classified materials during his time in office remained in his possession. Prior to her appointment, Pence also criticized the Justice Department for what he described as a double standard between Biden's records and the ones found at Donald Trump's Florida home last year. Garland also appointed a special counsel to oversee the DOJ's investigation of Trump's records as well as his role in the January 6th insurrection. And I'm just going to stop right there. If you can't see the difference between Trump and those classified documents and Biden and those classified documents, you have no brain. Period. End of story. Trump has tried to keep these documents. He has tried to hold off the FBI, the Marshal Service, you name it. He has lied. Biden has been truthful to the FBI, to the Marshals, to whoever. During an interview with conservative radio host Hugh Hewitt this month, Pence said, quote, whether it be the administration or whether it be the media papering over this, look, it was a massive overreach by the FBI, a massive overreaction this summer to execute a search warrant at the personal residence of a former president of the United States, and I said so. But having now created that standard and now abandoned that standard when the current president of the United States is found to have had classified documents in his possession after leaving office, I think I have no words right now. It's just incredibly frustrating to me. End of quote. One more difference. Biden is the sitting president. You cannot prosecute a sitting president. That is the law. That needs to be changed. I'll agree there. In a statement on his Truth Social website, Trump reacted to Tuesday's revelations by saying, quote, Mike Pence is an innocent man. He never did anything knowingly dishonest in his life. Leave him alone. End of quote. Except hold on to classified documents. Allegedly. Yeah, although I will say this, I might agree with Trump on that one because Mike Pence is this generation's equivalent of Dan Quayle. Yes, I said it. If you younger people don't know who Dan Quayle is, just look him up and look up the spelling of the word potato. When reached by NBC News, the offices of three former presidents referred to an October statement issued by the National Archives that said it had assumed physical and legal custody of presidential records from their administrations. The statement, issued after Trump accused his predecessors of mishandling classified documents, said that presidential records from the administrations of Barack Obama, George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, George H.W. Bush, and Ronald Reagan were securely moved into temporary facilities that the National Archives leased from the General Services Administration when those presidents left office. In a statement Tuesday, Obama's office said his classified records were submitted to the National Archives when he left office. His office said, quote, NARA continues to assume physical and legal custody of President Obama's materials to date, end of quote. George W. Bush's office also said that all of his, quote, presidential records, classified and unclassified, were turned over to the National Archives, end of quote, when he left the White House. Clinton's office said that he had, quote, properly turned over, end of quote, all of his classified materials to the National Archives in accordance with the Presidential Records Act. Once again, for those of you that are a little far back in the crowd, I'm going to repeat it again. The difference between Biden and Trump with documents is that Trump hid the documents, lied about having them, tried to keep them. That's why he got raided, because he's a liar, a known pathological liar. Probably the most glaring example, although I think George Santos is beating him by now. I'm not sure. All right. Let's go on to our next story here. This is kind of a big deal here. This might change things in Ukraine in the next few months. This is Summer Concepcion and Caroline Kenny writing for NBC News. This is dated January 25th. President Joe Biden announced Wednesday that the United States is sending 31 Abrams tanks to Ukraine in its war against Russia. The U.S. will also provide the necessary training and supplies needed to operate and run these tanks. Sending the tanks, according to Biden, will, quote, enhance Ukraine's capacity to defend its territory and achieve its strategic objectives, end of quote, because they are, quote, the most capable tanks in the world, end of quote. Biden added, quote, that's what this is about, helping Ukraine defend and protect Ukrainian land. It is not an offensive threat to Russia. There is no offensive threat to Russia, end of quote. Well, quite truthfully, I wish there was one. Sorry, Putin needs to be taken out. You've heard that here on this show. You won't hear it anywhere else. NBC News reported the development Tuesday. During a background call previewing Biden's remarks, senior administration officials said the announcement is, quote, very much a continuation of our effort to provide Ukraine with the capabilities that they need to continue to better defend themselves, end of quote. A senior administration official said, quote, and it's also in keeping with that representative of a long-term commitment that we have to Ukraine's defense needs, end of quote. In his remarks announcing the move, Biden emphasized that 31 M1 Abrams tanks are the equivalent of one Ukrainian tank battalion. The U.S. will also provide a training program to maintain and operate the tanks, as well as 8 M88 recovery vehicles to go along with the Abrams tanks that will, quote, provide recovery operations to make sure that the Ukrainians will be able to keep these Abrams up and running, end of quote. That's according to a senior administration official. The official added that the training will not take place in Ukraine. Biden said that the delivery of the tanks into the fields will take time that the U.S. will use to ensure, quote, Ukrainians are fully prepared to integrate the Abrams tanks into their defenses, end of quote. The president said the announcement was closely coordinated with allies as he praised German Chancellor Olaf Scholz for providing German Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine and leading an effort to organize a European contribution of 2 tank battalions to support the country. Biden's announcement was paired with Scholz's news of the move. Biden also commended the United Kingdom, France, Poland, Italy, Canada, Slovakia, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Finland for donating, quote, critical air defense systems to help secure Ukrainian skies and save the lives of innocent civilians, end of quote. Biden added, quote, as we approach the one-year mark with the Russia full-scale invasion of Ukraine, we remain united and determined as ever in our conviction and our cause. These tanks are further evidence of our enduring, unflagging commitment to Ukraine and our confidence in the skill of the Ukrainian forces, end of quote. A senior official said the decision to send the tanks was made after continued diplomatic conversations over the last few weeks with European allies and partners, including Germany. The official said, quote, President Biden will be or has spoken with Chancellor Scholz several times this month to coordinate on security assistance to Ukraine, including the joint announcement that we made a couple of weeks ago on Patriot missiles and the provisions of other assistance, end of quote. The president's announcement comes after he held a call with Scholz of Germany, along with French President Emmanuel Macron and British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, to continue discussions on aiding Ukraine. Sunak welcomed decisions by allies to announce major battle tank contributions. A Downing Street spokesperson said in a statement Wednesday that the, quote, decisive collective action would be a catalyst for other countries to follow suit. The Prime Minister said it was now clear Russia was on the back foot and there was a window for international partners to accelerate efforts to secure lasting peace for Ukraine. He called on allies to intensify their support in the coming weeks and months. End of quote. The decision is reversal for the Biden administration, which had been resisting pressure from Germany to send the tanks to Ukraine. U.S. officials previously insisted that Biden was not inclined to provide Abrams tanks because members of his national security team, including Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Mark Milley, did not believe they would be a net positive for the Ukrainians given how difficult they are to operate and maintain. Asked by NBC News' Andrea Mitchell on the background call what had changed in recent days and weeks for the U.S. to decide to send the tanks, a senior official said the administration has been trying to, quote, do the best we can to evolve the capabilities we are providing with to Ukraine with the war itself, end of quote. The senior administration official added, quote, and I think we all look at what's happening now and what we expect to happen in the future, particularly in the Donbass region. The kind of capabilities that Ukraine really needs are combined arms maneuver capabilities, the ability to fight effectively in open terrain, particularly, and armored capabilities are a key part of that, end of quote. During his announcement, Biden denied that Germany forced his hand on sending tanks to Ukraine. The president said, quote, Germany didn't force me to change my mind. We wanted to make sure we were all together. That's what we were going to do all along, end of quote. So there you go, folks. So it looks like it's going to take a few months for those Abrams tanks to actually see action in Ukraine. So we'll keep an eye on that. In the meantime, let's go ahead to our next story here. This is Seth Borenstein writing for the Associated Press. This is dated January 18th. This is bad news for the climate, folks. You need to listen to this. A sharp spike in Greenland temperatures since 1995 showed the giant northern island 2.7 degrees hotter than its 20th century average, the warmest in more than 1,000 years, according to new ice core data. Until now, Greenland ice cores, a glimpse into long-running temperatures before thermometers, hadn't shown much of a clear signal of global warming on the remotest north-central part of the island, at least compared to the rest of the world. But the ice cores also hadn't been updated since 1995. Newly analyzed cores drilled in 2011 show a dramatic rise in temperatures in the previous 15 years. That is according to a study published in Wednesday's journal Nature. Study lead author Maria Horhold, a glaciologist at the Alfred Wegener Institute in Germany, said, quote, we keep on seeing rising temperatures between 1990s and 2011. We have now a clear signature of global warming, end of quote. It takes years to analyze ice core data. Horhold has new cores from 2019, but hasn't finished studying them yet. She expects the temperature rise to continue as Greenland's ice sheet and glaciers have been melting faster recently. Climate scientist Martin Stendal of the Danish Meteorological Institute, who was not part of the research, said, quote, this is an important finding and corroborates the suspicion that the missing warming in the ice cores is due to the fact that the cores end before the strong warming sets in, end of quote. The ice cores are used to make a chart of proxy temperatures for Greenland running from the year 1000 to 2011. It shows temperatures gently sloping cooler for the first 800 years, then wiggling up and down while sloping warmer until a sharp and sudden spike hotter from the 1990s on. One scientist compared it to a hockey stick, a description used for other long-term temperature data showing climate change. The jump in temperature after 1995 is so much larger than pre-industrial times before the mid-19th century that there is almost zero chance that it is anything but human-caused climate change, according to Horrorhold. The warming spike also mirrors a sudden rise in the amount of water running off from Greenland's melting ice, according to the study. Horrorhold said that what had been happening in Greenland is that natural weather variability, undulations because of an occasional weather system called Greenland blocking in the past, had masked human-caused climate change. But as of 25 years ago, the warming became too big to be hidden. Now just think about that. The warming has become too big to be hidden. That should scare the hell out of everybody. Past data also showed Greenland not warming as fast as the rest of the Arctic, which is now warming 4 times faster than the global average, but the island appears to be catching up. Ice core data for years showed Greenland acting a bit differently from the Arctic. That's likely because of Greenland blocking, according to Horrorhold. Other scientists said as a giant landmass, Greenland was less affected by melting sea ice and other water factors compared to the rest of the Arctic, which is much more water adjacent. Horrorhold's team drilled 5 new cores near old cores so as to match established ice core records. They used the difference between 2 different types of oxygen isotopes found in the ice to calculate temperature, using an already established formula that is checked against observed data. Horrorhold and outside scientists said the new warming data is bad news because Greenland's ice sheet is melting. In fact, the study ends with data from 2011, and the next year had a record melt across Greenland, and the island's ice loss has been on high since then. Danish Meteorological Institute ice scientist Jason Box said, quote, "We should be very concerned about North Greenland warming because that region has a dozen sleeping giants in the form of wide tidewater glaciers and an ice stream." End of quote. Box added that when awakened, it will ramp up melt from Greenland. And according to U.S. National Snow and Ice Data Center Deputy Lead Scientist Twyla Moon, that means, quote, "rising seas that threaten homes, businesses, economies, and communities." End of quote. We might be past the point of no return, folks. That's something to really think about. We might already be past the point of no return unless we do something now, drastically, to reverse everything. Yeah, this is scary stuff. I have some more scary news. I'm going to skip to our next story here. This is Juliana Kim writing for National Public Radio. This is dated January 13th. If you think that Big Brother isn't watching you, think again, especially if you work from home. When Canadian accountant Carly Bessie was fired for being unproductive at her job, she found herself up against not only her former employer, but its time-tracking software too. Now, a civil tribunal, which is part of Canada's judicial system, has ruled that Bessie owes her former company $2,756 after the software installed on her laptop revealed she misrepresented over 50 hours at work. Bessie worked remotely for Reach CPA, an accounting firm based in British Columbia, Canada. The dispute began last year when Bessie claimed she was fired without just cause. Her employer argued that Bessie was rightfully let go because she engaged in time theft. Reach CPA said it gathered evidence using TimeCamp, time tracking software that records what files are accessed and for how long. The records showed a discrepancy of 50 hours between what Bessie reported as time worked and what TimeCamp logged as work activity. Bessie argued that she found the program difficult to use and she could not get the software to differentiate between work and time spent on her work laptop for personal use, which both parties agree her employer allowed during staff's off hours. In video submitted to court, Reach CPA showed that TimeCamp is able to record when and how long employees access work-related documents and to differentiate based on electronic pathway from when they're on non-work sites such as a streaming service like Disney+. The company makes the final distinction between work and non-work activities. Bessie also argued that she spent a significant amount of time working with paper documents, but didn't tell her company because, quote, they wouldn't want to hear that, end of quote. However, TimeCamp also tracks printing activity, and the company found no evidence that she printed a large volume of documents. Wow, this is just getting scarier and scarier. When confronted with the 50 unaccounted hours, Bessie told her manager that she inaccurately logged some hours in her timesheet. According to video cited in the ruling, Bessie said in a meeting with her company, quote, "I have plugged time to files that I didn't touch, and that wasn't right or appropriate in any way or fashion, and I recognize that, and so for that, I'm really sorry," end of quote. Ultimately, the Civil Resolution Tribunal dismissed Bessie's claims. The court also ruled that Bessie has 30 days to pay back her former employer for the unaccounted work hours she was paid for and other associated costs. A growing number of companies are using technologies to monitor its staff while they work from home. Employers see it as a tool to ensure workers aren't slacking off and improve efficiency. Workers and privacy advocates, however, say this kind of tracking is intrusive and worry that it will normalize workplace surveillance even when people return to the office. And there you go. They all want to say, well, we can't get people to work. Well, this is part of why. Stop spying on your employees. Good Lord. I mean, we've heard the stories about Amazon workers that have to pee in a bottle because they can't go and take a bathroom break. You know what that is? That's inhuman. Greedy, absolute greed. And I hate it. Oh, drives me insane. All right, so right now let's go to our next segment.
Stop! Hammer time!
Oh yeah, it's hammer time. It is time to drop the hammer on the douchebag of the week. We've got 2 winners for you this week, so anytime we have 2 winners, we let Wade Garrett chime in.
The double douche. Who is that guy? Gentlemen, Wade Garrett. Holy shit. Exactly right.
All right, winner number 1 this week, Donald Trump. I have this story. This is Dominic Mastrolangelo. This is dated January 19th. Folks, Donald Trump has really done it this time. Listen to this. Donald Trump is calling for the jailing of the journalist who published a leaked draft opinion showing the Supreme Court was poised to overturn Roe versus Wade. Last spring, political reporters Josh Gerstein and Alexander Ward published a blockbuster report on a draft opinion penned by Justice Samuel Alito that would overturn the landmark abortion ruling. The court, last week Thursday, made public a report detailing an investigation into the leak of the opinion, indicating that it was unable to identify the source of the leak to Politico. In a post on his Truth Social website, Trump said, quote, "They'll never find out, and it's important that they do. So go to the reporter and ask him or her who it was. If not given the answer, put whoever in jail until the answer is given. You might add the editor and publisher to the list." End of quote. Yeah, orange, wannabe, tin pot dictator. This is what you Republicans, you evil, violent, conservative traitors voted for. Unreal. Let me just ask you this. Do you conservatives actually believe in the Constitution? Like the First Amendment? Congress shall make no law? Do you actually believe that? Jesus Christ. In the days that followed Politico's report, congressional Republicans and conservative media figures expressed outrage that the opinion had been leaked before the court handed down its official decision on the matter and demanded the person responsible for the leak be found and punished. Trump previously suggested the Supreme Court go to the reporter who published the draft memo to try to find the source of the leak. The High Court voted to overturn Roe last June with its decision in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. Well, there's a little bit more to this that I want to get to. There's a great opinion piece that was written by Chris Walker at Truth Out. This is dated January 20th, and I am actually going to skip down a little bit here. Here's what Walker wrote in his opinion piece. Trump's latest attack on the media is consistent with his fascist comments and actions as president, a role in which he consistently targeted a free and independent press. Bravo! said it better than I ever could. The Biden administration has condemned Trump's comments. White House spokesman Andrew Bates said, quote, calling for egregious abuses of power in order to suppress the constitutional rights of reporters is an insult to the rule of law and undermines fundamental American values and traditions, end of quote. Walker added in parentheses, notably, the Biden administration itself has been less than stellar on issues of press freedom. The Biden administration, the Obama administration, the George W. Bush administration, the Clinton administration, the George H.W. Bush administration, the Reagan administration. Just go all the way back to Reagan, and you'll find a pattern here. It's unclear why Trump believes that the publishers of the Supreme Court leak could be arrested, as legal protections for journalists typically allow them to publish such documents without facing retribution or challenges from the state, as long as the information isn't deemed a threat to national security interests. Freedom Forum, a First Amendment rights advocacy group, gave this explanation, quote, a journalist can't be punished for publishing information that was obtained illegally as long as the journalist didn't do anything illegal. The government has never prosecuted a journalist for publishing leaked information. If it tried, it's likely they'd have to demonstrate direct, immediate, and irreparable harm caused by the publication. End of quote. If the Supreme Court investigation had been successful, it's possible it would have resulted in employment termination or other consequences for the leaker. But ultimately, there is no federal statute that bars Supreme Court workers from leaking documents to journalists unless they obtain the materials through a hack into court computers or through other illicit means. Trevor Timm, president of the Freedom of the Press Foundation, lambasted Trump for suggesting that journalists and publishers should be imprisoned for not revealing their sources. Timm told The Independent, quote, Trump's statement isn't exactly surprising given he's been saying similar things on the campaign trail, but it is appalling. No president should be allowed to threaten reporters with jail in order to reveal their sources. Even a former president or someone running for the position saying this can have a chilling effect on the state of journalism. End of quote. There you go, folks. This is all done by design. This is all done by design because, quite truthfully, conservatives, and there's conservatives in the Democratic Party too. I'm looking at you, Joe Biden, because you're not a progressive. You're not Bernie Sanders. You're not a progressive. These conservatives are masters to the owners of this country. That's bottom line, period, end of story. Winner number one, the orange pig, Donald Trump. Winner number two, Tucker Carlson. Oh boy, old Tucker has lost his mind regarding M&Ms in the last year or two. It's unreal. Complaining about M&Ms. This is unbelievable. You know what? I think we've got an actual clip here that we're going to play of part of his original rant about M&Ms. Our first piece of audio runs about 54 seconds. This is the original rant, one of the original rants, I guess, that Tucker Carlson had about M&Ms being changed. Take a listen.
Bet you didn't think M&Ms were pushing intolerance, but they were. They've been changed. You're seeing the changes right now on your screen. The green M&M, you will notice, is no longer wearing sexy boots. Now she's wearing sensible sneakers. Why the change? Well, according to M&M's, quote, we all win when we see more women in leading roles because leading women do not wear sexy boots. Leading women wear frumpy shoes. The frumpier, the better. That's the rule. The other big change is that the brown M&M has, quote, transitioned from high stilettos to lower block heels. Also less sexy. That's progress. M&Ms will not be satisfied until every last cartoon character is deeply unappealing and totally androgynous. Until the moment you wouldn't want to have a drink with any one of them. That's the goal. When you're totally turned off, we've achieved equity. They've won.
Wow, he has really gone off the deep end on this. I tell you, it's amazing. I think he needs to be kicked off the air and given a mental exam. He's just really lost his mind over this. Well, M&M's have decided that they're going to retire their spokes candies because of all the controversy ginned up by old Tucker Carlson, because he can't get enough of the co-anchors, his female co-anchors' legs on the network, which, by the way, we've covered that over the years. Roger Ailes and, basically all the misogynists over a Fox propaganda channel. Yeah, hey, I'm going to say it. I'm going to tell the truth when the truth is right there. All the men over a Fox propaganda channel are misogynists. All they care about is a woman's looks, how short that skirt can get, how nice those legs are. Oh, are you wearing pumps? That's just exactly what they are. Because Tucker Carlson wants to fantasize about having sex with the female M&Ms. And I'm just going to say that right here and now, because that's all that's on his mind. Well, like I said, M&M's decided that they are going to put their candy-shelled spokespeople on the shelf for a while. They've actually got Maya Rudolph, the actress and daughter of the late great singer Minnie Riperton, is going to be their spokesperson for the time being. So Tucker Carlson really wanted to add it up a little bit further here. Let's play this clip from earlier this week on Fox Propaganda Channel. Take a listen.
Well, for most of its history as a company, Mars Inc. was known for making candy, Milky Way, Skittles, Snickers, and most famously M&Ms, which they claim melted in your mouth but not in your hand. But over time, churning out delicious and highly lucrative calorie bombs was not enough for Mars. Its executives wanted to be Starbucks. Sure, our product is unhealthy, but we're woke, so please don't notice. So in its ad campaigns, Mars set about making its M&M characters as unattractive as possible, because when you're intentionally repulsive, it's clear you've got the right politics. So the green M&M lost her sexy boots, the brown...
Yeah, you definitely have that right, because you guys are repulsive, you evil, violent, conservative traitors. Let me continue.
M&M, her stiletto heels. The orange M&M, meanwhile, became a poster boy for the mental health crisis and would henceforth, quote, acknowledge and embrace his anxiety, because America badly needs more neurotic candy. Then late last year, Mars went further. The company added obese and distinctly frumpy lesbian M&Ms to promote, quote, feminism and body positivity.
Now, wait a minute. I want to know how he knows that these M&Ms are lesbians. Did he ask them? Did he say, are you a lesbian? Do you like other female M&Ms? Do you like male M&Ms? Maybe you're pansexual. I don't know. Tucker Carlson has lost his mind. He's totally gone off the deep end. Let me continue.
In other words, explained the Mars Corporation, it's good to be fat. Have some more M&Ms. Well, we reported on this at the time and pledged a deeper investigation into it. But before we could complete our investigation, Mars announced that it's suspending its ad campaign. A chocolate vendor promoting obesity was just too shameless even by modern standards. But at CNN, they were infuriated by the news. News anchors who have not had a carb since the Bush administration became hysterical as they defended Mars's pro-fatness campaign. CNN political analyst and notably unhappy person Kirsten Powers attacked this show for our, quote, misogynist, anti-trans, fat-phobic garbage rhetoric. Congressman Richie Torres of New York did the same. So did Bloomberg and Forbes and the New York Times. And it made you wonder if all these people are secretly being paid to flack for corporate America. Probably not. They just can't stand the idea that candy isn't political.
No, you're just being paid by big oil and big pharma. That's all it is there, Tucker. Oh, my God. God damn. Tucker Carlson just makes me want to puke. He really does. Like I said, I am pretty sure that Tucker Carlson has finally gone completely off of the deep end. Yep. He's gone nuts. Cuckoo, cuckoo. Or in his case, cuckoo, cuckoo. I tell you what, following QAnon makes you nutty. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. So to this week's winners, Donald Trump and Tucker Carlson, we have this message for you.
Don't be a douchebag.
Oh, yeah, you got that right. Hey, Tucker, I tell you what, I might not be able to whip cream with an outboard motor, but I can kick your ass. How about a celebrity boxing match there, chump? What a complete total douchebag. All right, I want to get to our final story here, and this is kind of an educational subject. I want to read this piece. This was published by David Norlin, writing for the Missouri Independent. It's also been published elsewhere. But he gives a great lecture on right-wing radio. The headline reads, How Venomous Voices from Right-Wing Radio Radicalized America. For better than half a lifetime, I've studied media and its effects on the public psyche. Teaching broadcast history and directing a student radio station, the larger picture seemed pretty clear. But one question always frustrated and perplexed me. How did AM radio, in particular, come to program such venomous, outrageous programming? Why do station managers, salespeople, even some listeners insist that rush rants are what the public wants? And how did Christian radio come to carry such unchristian messages? One of my students, fresh from his daily Glenn Beck listening commute, touted Glenn's latest on Salina, Kansas radio. Certainly it provoked earnest discussions in class and out. Our respectful relationship culminated with his presenting me a Cuban cigar at retirement. Our mutual respect didn't, however, end my frustration at Beck's seeds planted daily on local AM. What forces shape, often without general awareness, a combative story about who we are? Why have we tolerated, even encouraged these voices when the threat they posed culminated in the election of a philandering, draft-dodging, election-denying, serial-lying, consummate con-man, tax cheat, and television show host as president of the divided states of America? On the media's recent public radio series, The Divided Dial provides an answer and a fresh perspective on U.S. radio history. Consider young Stuart Epperson, who went from listening to local casting. His small enterprise grew into one of the most influential public mind propagandizers you've never heard of, Salem Broadcasting. You actually have heard of Salem if you've listened to this show over the last 10 years. In a small 1930s southern Blue Ridge mountain town of Ararat, named for Noah's Ark destination, his brother Ralph mail-ordered a Montgomery Ward radio set. They eventually opened windows wide for neighbors who flocked there to listen. The Eppersons soon expanded from receiving to sending. A maze of wires and tubes enabled them to create their own broadcasts. According to the series, aspiring singers and musicians flocked to the home with banjos and fiddles, filling Epperson's living room and the local airwaves with what they call hillbillery. Soon local preachers were invited to sermonize to a vaster congregation than they could have imagined. They became part of an electronic war of equipment and band space. That free speech eventually demanded federal regulation. The Communications Act of 1934 imposed station licensing for specific frequencies and power. It provided enforcement to stop stations from overwhelming or interrupting each other's signal. The question was how to get a license. Fast forward to 1973. Epperson got one, a big one, and many more. He graduated from South Carolina's white supremacist evangelical Bob Jones University. With classmate and wife Nancy Atzinger, he joined her brother, fellow Bob Jones alum Edward Atzinger, to establish Christian stations in Bakersfield and Oxnard, California. They defied standards right away, making the stations businesses, not nonprofits. As commercial stations, they sold airtime to preachers. Again, according to the series, it was a win-win. As a platform for preachers with money coming in, they bought more radio stations and turned them into pulpits. They were not a lone wolf Christian station, but a network. By 1990, Salem Broadcasting had 2 stations in Portland, San Diego, and New York City. Prominent in their programming, which included James Dobson's Focus on the Family, gross, were voices for Segregation Academy independent schools like Bob Jones University and against LGBTQ people and abortion rights. Quick to see the power in such conglomeration, Paul Weyrich, a 1970s conservative leader, got on the air through Salem. He knew that elite leaders strategizing wouldn't be enough. They needed megaphones. They needed radio. As an on-air host and program director at a Kenosha, Wisconsin radio station and a news director in Denver, Weyrich knew radio to be a crucial communication channel for the new religious right. He also understood it could influence elections by getting the right people to the polls. As Weyrich explained to evangelical leaders in 1980, quote, "I don't want everybody to vote. Our leverage goes up as the voting populace goes down," end of quote. God, that sounds like a typical Republican right there. I heard this garbage years ago when I was working for Bob Goodrich, and he was telling me about his conservative buddies. Weyrich founded the Council for National Policy in 1981. Today, the CNP and its lobbying arm has included the likes of Ginny Thomas, Mike Pence, and Cleta Mitchell, the Donald Trump lawyer working to overturn the 2020 election results. According to the series, it also includes Salem co-founders Epperson and Atzinger. Salem is important, but only one player in the historical dominance of Christian nationalist, xenophobic, anti-Semitic, racist themes on radio. A master of and tool for that dominance was legendary Kansan John R. Brinkley. Brinkley opened KFKB, Kansas' first Kansas Best radio out of Milford. Widely known for his quack goat gland operations to restore male virility and likely killing dozens on the operating table, Brinkley also preached sermons and inveighed against federal and state authorities. The Kansas Reflector's Max McCoy wrote that Brinkley, quote, garnered the support of fascists, including Gerald B. Winrod, a Wichita preacher and Nazi sympathizer who blamed all of society's troubles on an international Jewish conspiracy, end of quote. In 1930, Radio Digest named KFKB the most popular station in the United States. Shortly after, in the same year, Brinkley's license was revoked as not in the public interest, which was great back then. See, this is stuff that they don't enforce anymore. The FCC does not enforce public interest anymore. They really don't. It is in the public interest that a broadcast license is issued to a radio or television station holder. If they do not broadcast in the public interest, they should be revoked of their license to broadcast. Yet we see that with so many different outlets. I tell you what, folks, I have some homework for you this week. I want you to go to the Federal Communications Commission website, fcc.gov, and I want you to dig into your local radio station's public files, specifically the quarterly interest reports. These are reports that they have to file every quarter explaining what programs they aired that were within the public interest. I had to fill these out as somebody who ran a Pacifica affiliate at one time. It's interesting to see what passes as public interest these days because it's disgusting. And I have one more assignment for you. While you're looking at your local station's public files, I want you to read an article that was published by Tom Hartman about the death of Air America Radio. And it didn't have anything to do with the content of Air America. It was the fact that Cumulus, radio operator Cumulus, was bought out by Mitt Romney. There's the answer, folks. We're out of time for this week. We'll be back next week. I'm Darren Gibson. Please support independent media, the First Amendment, and a woman's right to choose.
The stations that carry Southpaws do not necessarily share the opinions expressed on the show. Southpaws is protected by the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and is copyrighted by Big D Entertainment. All rights reserved.